us, and also it's always a pleasure to see a familiar face, especially one that's bright and smiling. I guess she's cheerful that it's Friday as well, because with us via Zoom is our counterpart, our colleague in Tobago, Dr. Faith B. Israel. Good morning, Dr. B. Israel, and welcome to Talking Point.
Good morning, good morning. Yes, I am happy that I'm here this morning, having some internet challenges, but, you know, we're doing the best that we can. But yes, I'm happy to be here.
Dr. B. Israel, if you have TSTT as your internet provider, I completely understand. But nevertheless, we're happy to see
you. We are not commenting about any particular internet provider, but we are having significant challenges this morning.
Anyway, Dr. B. Israel, well, yesterday, a 3.5-hour budget presentation, budget estimates for financial year 2022-2023, the first of the Progressive Democratic Patriots-led 𝐏𝐃, themed towards a smarter, greener, more autonomous Tobago. This was led by Chief Secretary, who's also Secretary for the Economy in Tobago, that is Mr. 𝐏𝐿𝐼 Augustine. Now, this budget focused heavily on self-governance, foreign direct investment, as well as food security for the island. First thing I'm going to ask you, Dr. B. Israel, is $3.97 million, which is roughly 6.9%. Billion dollars, which is roughly 6.9% of our national budget. Fingers crossed that you guys would be getting this when the Minister of Finance, Colm Imbert, reads his budget for the national economy come October.
Yeah, so it was a very lengthy, we were sitting there and thinking, wow, he is not coming to an end. You know, the people are stuck, and I'm looking at the stack of papers and they're not going down at all. But it was an enjoyable budget. It outlined, I think, the PDP's vision and the PDP's mandate, at least for the next. So yes, we do budgets yearly, but this, because it was our first budget, we felt it necessary to kind of lay a very solid foundation for what we will do, at least for these first 4 years, and then as we move forward. So yes, the budget, 3.97 billion, which is about the 6.9% of what we estimate to be the national budget coming up. That number, of course, as he explained, the Tobago House of Assembly has a very special kind of arrangement with the central government, where a couple of years ago we basically went to court. It was a dispute resolution commission, and the dispute resolution commission said that the 𝐏𝐃 should get at least 4.03 to 6.9% of the budget. And we've never gotten anywhere close to the 6.9% of the budget. But last year and year before, during the autonomy discussions and the autonomy bills discussions, the government said that they were willing to give us 6.8% in that new bill. So since that was a big chunk, a big part of the discussion last year and year before going into the autonomy bill discussion, we hope that they are ready to show Tobago and Tobagonians and all of Trinidad and Tobago that they were really serious. Because even though those bills were not passed, even though they never even really made it onto the floor of the parliament to have a debate and to have a vote, we are hoping that because of what is already in the law, that they will show good faith to Tobagonians, that they are willing to give us that 6.9%, because the law already allows for it. They did not need the bills to do that. The current dispensation, the current laws allow for it, and we're hoping they follow through with what they said they were willing to do for Tobago.
Well, Dr. B. Israel, another aspect in relation to this, what they would be doing for Tobago, is the conversation surrounding a very big point, actually, the 𝐶HA outpost to be located in Pembroke Street. This is also to push for self-governance and Tobago economy. It's also in line with the establishment of a new office, the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary. One of the criticisms that we've heard from the minority in Tobago is the fact that this budget and the conversation surrounding the budget didn't sound as though there could be any sort of partnership or willingness to work together. It sounded more antagonistic. How does the PDP respond to that? And if I may just add very quickly, the fact that Mr. 𝐏𝐿𝐼 Augustine stated that they will be deliberately disrupting national parliament.
So when we say deliberately disrupting national parliament, what we are speaking about specifically is the process that has been taken several times before to get Tobago autonomy, that Tobago autonomy issue. And what he spoke about was the fact that we have gone through this very cycle over and over and over and over and over and over again. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So we are going to take a different path to have a different result. The result that we want, autonomy for Tobago. The path that we've been taking before, we sit back in Tobago, they come to Tobago, do a couple consultations, have a couple meetings, they go back to Parliament, and then within Parliament, they do what they wish in Parliament. And so when we say we are going to disrupt, what we're talking about is disrupting that process where the Tobago part of it seems to happen in Tobago, and then what happens in Trinidad in Parliament seems to be very removed from what is happening on the ground in Tobago. So that is what we're talking about. It is to come and be a part of that process in Parliament. Because you know what? I don't think that people realize the number of Tobagonians. So Tobago, we have maybe 60 or so last census, which was 11 years ago, says that there are about 60,000 of us on this island. But we are also very familiar with the fact that for probably every one or two of us on the island, there's at least one or two of us as in Tobagonians living in Trinidad who also need to be a part of this process. And the Parliament needs to recognize that when we are speaking about Tobago, we are not just speaking about those who are on the island in Tobago, but we are also speaking about the Tobagonians who actively contribute to the economy known as Trinidad on the island of Trinidad, and all of this needs to be taken into account. So it's not adversarial. We are just using a different strategy, and we are putting the Parliament on notice, putting the Tobago-born Prime Minister on notice that we're not going to use the same mechanisms that we've been using all of these last 40 or so years. The PDP, as we have shown to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that we are very willing to use very unconventional mechanisms, and it's the same unconventional mechanism that got us to the point where we are now 14-1 in the Tobago space, coming out of a situation where the party is, 5 years old? That is what we're talking about. We are willing to do this differently. It's not antagonistic, but we're doing it differently.
Dr. B. Israel, part of the presentation included cluing us in with regards to the situation with the airport not being open as late as the Chief Secretary and I assume the Secretary of Tourism would have liked to see, because it limits the amount of flights that Caribbean Airlines could have on a daily basis. And then, of course, there is the question of Caribbean Airlines and how much flights it's committed to as the situation recovers back to normal, and what might be that economic balance point that they have to figure out. Now, with that said, one of the things that the Chief Secretary did point out is that the operational cost that was given to him or put forward to him as the reason why the airport was not open until 1:32 a.m. in order to have flights that late is a cost of only $16,800 a day, a cost which he said that the THA was willing to foot the bill for as part of the funds available to deal with the air bridge, I believe. And I thought it was very interesting and very commendable that essentially, here's the Chief Secretary of Tobago House of Assembly saying, we are willing to put our money where our mouth is. We are willing to take on the responsibilities. That's why we want these resources, because, and he included the fact that, and I believe he was alluding to the situation with NEDCO, where certain government agencies basically assumed that they could move ahead because ultimately the parties of the THA and central government were aligned, and the actual official processes of responsibilities of the various sections on the THA weren't necessarily seen to. So is this budget ultimately the Tobago House Assembly saying, listen, we need to realign these things as how they are supposed to be, as how they are written in our various laws, and make sure that we don't have these informal under the table dealings and backroom dealings to run these important parts of our country, and more specifically for Tobago?
Certainly. I think one of the things we recognized coming into this was that the idea of PNM in Tobago having PNM in Trinidad being their big brother, a lot of the responsibility that should have happened in Tobago was not taking place, probably because they honestly didn't have to, because there really was a big brother in Trinidad taking care of it for you. But that goes against our wish for autonomy. If we're saying we want to be autonomous, if we're saying we want to have control of these things, we need to show that we are able to take control of these things. So many of the conversations we have had over the last 6 months or so, the entities, for example, Caribbean Airlines and others, they have actually said to us, this is the first time we're having this kind of conversation with anybody in the Tobago House of Assembly. That has shocked us. That shocked us because we thought that the conversations were happening, and we thought that, something else was happening in the background, only to realize that it was really on our part in the Tobago House of Assembly where we were not taking up our responsibility. And because we have recognized that, we are saying, hey, if we are saying we want to be autonomous, we have to show that we are big boys and we are big girls and we are willing to do the work. So yes, when we recognize that it only cost about 5 million or so, a little over 5 million, to keep our airports open a little later so that we can have the flights coming in. When we recognize that we are in, June, and when you look at Caribbean Airlines' schedule for the next couple months, all of the tickets are already sold. Mm-hmm. Half of the people who need to come to Tobago have not even gotten a chance to purchase a ticket. We have to take a responsible thing and do what we need to do to get people on the island, because as you know, our domestic tourism, or tourism generally, is where we need, what we are trying to bulk up. So we have to do what we have to do. We are willing to realign. We are willing to look at the monies that we are spending on airlines in different places, looking at the data. How many people are those airlines really bringing in? If we pay this airline $20 million or $30 million for the year, are we really getting maximum benefit out of that? Or is it worth taking a $5 million from this particular airline, renegotiating, putting it into this so that we have more people coming on the island? Those are the kinds of conversations we've been having for the last 6 months. And that is why the Chief Secretary and Secretary for Finance could have said very clearly, we are willing to foot this bill because it's not a large bill and the benefit will outweigh the cost in the long run. So yes, it's all part of our push for economy, but our push for autonomy, but it is also showing that because we do not, as in the Progressive Democratic Patriots, we do not have a big brother or big sister anywhere looking out for us. We have to make the tough decisions for ourselves, and we are willing to do that.
Kemia, bringing you into the conversation now, there are many talking points from yesterday's budget presentation, but as Dr. Faith B. Israel just mentioned, they have to make the tough decisions because there's no big brother as such as what we've seen 20 years previously. I know that we had some conversations yesterday. I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add or put forward to Dr. B. Israel.
Sure. So Dr. B. Israel, the PAP prides itself in being a party on the ground. In fact, you all would have won the election on that. Do you think that the budget that was presented by the Chief Secretary yesterday really and truly reflects the views of the people on the ground and what the people of Tobago actually want for the island?
It certainly does, because I am not sure if you guys are aware, but for the period leading up to the budget, we've actually had several consultations on the ground about it. So the Chief Sec was talking to farmers and fishermen. The Chief Sec was talking to individuals who are, some of the lowest wage earners, the CPEP workers and URP workers and so forth. The Chief Sec has been having conversations with these individuals. That is why, for example, we've made some of the tough decisions. So even though in Trinidad, the CPO and you all with the government there and the unions there talking about only 2%, only 3%, only 4%, we have made a decision in Tobago to raise the salaries of some of our, the URP workers and some of our agri workers and so forth, because this is not this is something that they have said to us, only we can't live on this amount of money every month. We absolutely cannot do it. And this budget takes into consideration their wants and their needs. We also recognize that if we bring more economic activities to the island generally, everyone benefits. So that is why, for example, we would be willing to spend the $5 million to bring more Caribbean airline flights, because we know bringing more people means that the guy who's selling pie on the street would make more money, the taxi driver would make more money, the shop would make more money, the bed and breakfast would make more money. Everybody collectively makes more money if we do that. So yes, it does represent the man on the ground, and you would hear the spokespersons for different groups are already saying, wow, we've never been recognized before. That was an amazing thing. It was the one sentence that said, yes, we will talk to, we will deal with, we will interact with, and they are really happy about that. So certainly it is a budget for the man on the ground.
Well, we've heard a fair response from the Tobago Chamber. I know that my colleague Annie Johnson this morning had her dad on the program, but we've also heard from other members of the Tobago Chamber. They said they're happy. Speaking about recognition was the fact that the Chief Secretary intends to establish the Tobago Development Bank, pump $60 million into it for businesses to recover from COVID-19. That's one aspect of development and recovery. The other aspect is foreign direct investment, because he mentioned a three-part plan, which included the amendment or lobbying for the amendment of the Foreign Investment Act, as well as re-establishing the current land licensing regime. Foreign direct investment, you all are targeting this. Perhaps this is a lesson that we can take from you, because you're not only looking at the oil and gas around the water of Tobago's, which you all have said you all will be willing to go back to the negotiating table for the Minister of Finance to ensure that no longer could they state Tobago's contribution or undermine Tobago's contribution, you know, I say. So foreign direct investments, again, a big part of this budget.
It is a big part of the budget, and what we've recognized is that there are quite a number of actual Tobagonians, for example, who live outside of Trinidad and Tobago, who've done a pretty good job for themselves wherever they are, and they want to come back home. They want to invest. They want to be a part of developing, but they've never been given an opportunity to do so. So yesterday, for example, following the discussion about having our medical facilities incorporate teaching activities and so forth, one of our prominent nursing individuals who lives outside, I saw a post from her, yes, thank you, I want to come home and contribute to teaching in the medical field, because that is what I've wanted to do all of my life. The same thing applies to individuals in different spheres. So we recognize that we do need people to come. We do need people to come with their finances. We will make arrangements, for example, if we need to give land or give access to land so that they can build homes, or so that they can build companies or factories. Of course, the caveat being you need to then you need to then be able to hire people, train people locally, so that we all benefit on the ground. Those are the discussions that we need to have, and those are the actual actions that we will do within the next couple of years. Of course, it's important to know that what we've presented yesterday, all of it will not happen during fiscal 2023. It's impossible for all of that to happen in 1 year. But one of the things that I know that my Chief Secretary for Finance has been pounding up with us, we need to start. We need to start. And once we start, the ball gets rolling and we can continue. What we've recognized that has happened over the last 20 or so years is that there are projects that have been on the books in Tobago forever. They never got started, and because they never got started, they've been on the books for 20 years. We are not going to do that. We are going to start it, and starting it forces us to continue doing them and continue producing, continue being productive on the island, and that's what we have to do, including getting people to come back or just sending back their finances to help us develop.
Well, Dr. Israel, that leads me to a slight concern I have, and it'll be very tricky to voice it without sounding perhaps maybe that I'm bashing Tobago, and I don't mean, if it comes across that way, it's not what I mean. But foreign direct investment. Now, obviously, you've referenced the diaspora coming back home, trying to get opportunities, because I understand we're a small island nation, twin island nation. There's only so many opportunities in so many fields and industries here as opposed to the rest of the world. So trying to bring that back in and generating those opportunities, that would be a major help, not just to get those individuals coming home, but also for future generations. However, part of foreign direct investment, obviously, you would like to think of it as foreign capital coming in for various industries just in general, not just from the diaspora. Now, I understand, because I don't think it's limited to Tobago. I think both in Trinidad and Tobago, there's always some wariness with foreign ownership and foreign influence. There always will be. Now, with regards to Tobago, there might be some very low-hanging fruit examples that older people might be aware about, but generally speaking, is this initiative looking to target a lot of foreign capital if possible? Because even in the crisis that we're in now, there's still opportunity and there's still people looking to invest in new projects and have new opportunities to find them. And Tobago is an untouched land where there could be plenty new opportunities. Is Tobago ready for potentially, yes, foreign capital, but also what comes with that, foreign ownership and foreign influence? Because, I mean, like I said, both islands tend to be a bit wary at times.
And I think one of the things that Tobagonians have shown is that we are very willing to have the difficult conversations, and we're very willing to say no. I mean, I'm sure you've recognized that over the last couple of years, particularly with the PDP leadership, that we are very willing to say no if we realize that, because we know all money ain't good money. We know that. And even if you look at the example with the hotel Marriott, what we've done, the conversations we've had with Marriott over the last 6 months, Marriott has actually said to us, we've never had this conversation with the Tobago House of Assembly. We were having these conversations with the big brothers in Trinidad. And what we have said to them very clearly is, okay, so you are now having the conversation with the Tobago House of Assembly. Yes, you are bringing in your money. Yes, you are bringing in your investment. But these are the concerns. These are the concerns for the fishermen in the area. These are the concerns for the environmentalists who knows that we have hidden treasures in the ocean right next to where you want to build. These are the concerns. So you go back, now that you've heard the concerns, you go back, bring us your designs that incorporate all of these concerns, and we will go from there. Now, what we know in the Tobago House of Assembly, if those designs do not match up with what the concerns are for our fishermen and our environmentalists and so forth, we are very willing to say thanks, but no thanks, Marriott, because that is what we are willing to do. That is why we've been elected. That's why we've been placed here. And I think we've done it enough so that people recognize that if you're coming and you're coming, you have to come good, or we are not going to be the ones that are bought because you dangle money in front of us. We are willing to give up our patronage or give up our property or give up all of those things. No, no, no. The PDP has stated very clearly that any investment that happens in Tobago needs to benefit Tobagonians, and we are willing to make the tough decisions, even if it means saying no thank you to an investment opportunity.
Dr. B. Israel, I know that we've agreed time is very short, so I want to thank you. It's 8:31. Thank you very much for your time this morning. We appreciate your presence, and we hope to continue the conversation next week. But for now, this is where we'll have to end it.
Thank you for having me, and yes, I didn't even realize the time had gone so quickly, but thanks for the reminder, because I need to be somewhere else shortly. Have a great day, guys.
Have a great day, Dr. B. Israel, and a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Bye.
𝐏𝐃𝐏𝐒, bringing you